Hello everybody, I am back with another unedited video and I'm getting a lot of questions about seasonality and I thought I would just take a moment to make a video about all these things I'm talking about down in the comments below rather than trying to piecemeal everything together. But I've just, been getting a lot of questions about seasonality. And to be honest with you, seasonality is something that is very new. A new way of thinking for me just this past year alone. Previously I would just purchase items, I would list them as I would get them and never really think about, running a sale or holding items or, doing anything like that. So you guys have asked, I've got a bunch of notes here and we're gonna go over them. So what is seasonality? First of all, just really briefly, seasonality is basically in terms of like clothing reselling, items, sell-through rates, how much people are buying in certain categories change with the seasons. And so items have what we call a seasonality. So like tank tops, right? They are more likely to sell in summer when it's hotter out. And towards the winter, they're not going to sell so well. So every item seems to have a seasonality, especially in clothing. So people buy ahead of season. That is one thing I do know to be true. And again, I am not an expert by any means, and I'm still learning all of this myself, but I thought I would share with you what I do know about seasonality and what has been working for us so far. And I'll continue to build on that as I learn more myself. So people buy ahead of season. I've mentioned this before, but I worked 10 plus years in retail for a major company, one that you probably all know in some way or some form. And so I have a lot of experience on the higher level, the back end of seasonality and pricing, inventory, and all this stuff. And I do know that people buy ahead of season. If you think about your grocery store or a TJ Maxx, even restaurants, there's a seasonality to all kinds of things. And so you'll start to see all kinds of stores all over the world as seasons are approaching. They will change their sets, they'll change their marketing, they will change their sale types, they'll start changing their verbiage. And a lot of times customers will complain about that. So they'll be like, why are we talking about Christmas? Why are all these Christmas sets out and we haven't even had Thanksgiving yet? That's something you'll notice in a lot of stores, and maybe you've experienced that yourself. So there is a reason for that. There is millions of dollars in market research done by all of these companies that are choosing to change their, I'm just going to call it marketing for the sake of everyone here, but like their displays and all their marketing. There's a reason that they do that. They spend millions of dollars knowing the data behind when something needs to change in a season for their store. So I'm not going to go into all of the details of why that is, but just know that if other major stores that are successful are doing it, you should probably be doing that in your store as well. So people also buy ahead of season. So is it because the stores are changing their displays that people are buying ahead of season? I'm not sure. I honestly believe that people, when they start to feel the weather change, anticipate that change and, they want to get ahead of it. So stores transition seasons early and people buy ahead of season, which means if you want to be on track for where your buyers are at and what your competitors are doing, you also need to be ahead of season. And that is what I know for sure in my years of experience in retail and also in reselling. So just trust the research on that, trust what all of these stores are doing, and just know that it is a good idea for you to have somewhat of a seasonality plan. So what can you do on your end to deal with the effects of seasons changing and kind of get ahead of seasonality? Here are some of the things that I am doing and that have worked for me. Number one is come up with a seasonal plan, like literally type out a document that you can follow every year build on it. Maybe you take away some things as you learn, but in general, come up with a seasonal plan and have that ready to go, because sometimes we have really good ideas and really good intentions, but then we don't write it down and we don't have it in front of our face all the time. And so you might have a plan to be ahead seasonally, and then, Christmas rolls around and you just now start listing sweaters. So I think it's really important to put a plan together, have it in place, make sure it's somewhere that you're going to see it quite often. And it's going to really help you not to forget your seasonality plan and hold yourself accountable to that. So some things within that seasonality plan, I forgot to mention, but I was supposed to do a video all about this and I never did. Maybe I should do that. But I went to Posh Fest last year, Nikki and I did, and one of the things that I took away from Posh Fest, I learned the most from this session, was someone that works for Google came and showed us how Google Trends works. And Google Trends is something that you guys can actually access. Anybody can access it. So if you just type in Google Trends, go to that portion of Google and just kind of play around with it. I'm still not an expert at that either. I just kind of played around with it. But essentially what it is you can type in keywords. Let's say you want to know when people are searching for swimsuits. Google Trends can give you that information. They can let you know about what time people start searching for that on Google. And it can be a very valuable tool. And they'll show you you can get a graph of what months it spikes, what months that starts to dip, and how popular certain keywords are. They went into a couple of details of some of the different aesthetics. I'm trying to think of I don't know if they use cottage core or Y2K or what, but they showed kind of the spike and how to tell when a trend was kind of on the decline too, so that you could be ahead of that. And I think it'd be very valuable for lots of things, but specifically about seasonality things. So, if you're searching swimsuit, or if you're searching wool sweater or something like that, you could pretty easily tell when you needed to start being ahead of schedule. And that is something that I'm currently working on, is trying to figure out the exact months or weeks or whatever that I should be transitioning over. This is it, let's do it. Currently, the only way that I am ahead of schedule is once I start noticing the future season sell. So right now I'm in the middle of summer. It's been 90 degrees out, but I notice people are starting to buy sweaters. So that, encouraged me now with sourcing to think a little bit differently and prepare now for that. But I think what I would like to do, and I haven't done it yet, is actually go onto Google Trends and do some actual hardcore data research and figure out when the best months are. But that is something that you guys can do as well, and look up some keywords on Google Trends. So come up with a seasonal plan. Once you figure out when you want to start transitioning to the next season. So for me, it is the beginning of August. And like I said, I've decided, okay, I need to transition because I started seeing fall and winter stuff start selling. I'm going to transition. So what does this mean? So what I have done, the few things that I have done in my seasonal plan is, you guys know we're scheduled way ahead of schedule. We have sourcing done way ahead of schedule. I'm looking over here because I'm looking at all of our sourced items. But we're probably, let me see here, I got it on the board. We are almost 2.5 weeks ahead of schedule on sourcing, which means everything that I sourced today will not get listed for 2.5 weeks. And then on top of that, we are also scheduled out a couple of weeks as well. So anything that I purchased today will not get active until 2 weeks plus 2 weeks, a whole month. So I have to really keep that in mind as well. And you guys should too, if you're somebody that's ahead of schedule or has a draft bank. So what I did is I went through all of my unlisted inventory and I pulled all of my current season items, meaning my warmer weather items, my summer things. So things that have linen in them, things that are very lightweight, things that are sleeveless, things that have very bright multicolor to them, brands that I know only do well during spring and summer. All of those types of items I have pulled ahead of schedule, and we are actually listing those right now. Like this week, we're listing them. And the reason I do that is because right now, since people are starting to transition to colder weather items, now you have a window, a very short window now, of how long people are going to be looking for those summer items. So you want to give those items the best chance they have to sell in the current season, so that you're not waiting until a whole year from now to do it all over again. And that is something that I had done in the past. And all this year we have been doing this once a quarter. Once a season starts to change, we will pull those items and list them ahead of schedule, but I only do it once a quarter. Something else that we do is start marking down the current season's inventory. So I'm probably going to give it like a week or two, but at some point I am going to do like a markdown sale or send a bulk amount of offers for a pretty heavy discounted rate to try and sell as much as I can of my spring and summer items right before that short window of time when they're most likely to sell ends. That way I can make space for the new inventory that I'm going to purchase. And if you guys are new to reselling, I'll let you in on this, but if you are not new to reselling, you know that fall and winter takes up just so much more room because you're buying coats, you're buying pants, you're buying sweaters, and that stuff's a lot more bulky than the other things that you are listing in spring and summer. So for every one item that I list, like a t-shirt in the spring or summer, I'm looking at needing 2 times that amount of space for one sweater. So I am really having to be cautious of space, and I think you guys should too. So here in about a couple weeks, as we near the end, probably I would say a few weeks before I feel the season itself ends, I'm gonna do a big markdown sale. And you can do that using eBay markdown, or you could even do eBay promotions. You can choose the category. There's lots of tutorials on how to do that. And then for Poshmark, I personally use Posher VA because it's really simple to just filter your Poshmark closet to what you want to mark down and then tell Posher VA subset from page, and it'll only do that action for what's on your page. And so I just do bulk offers that way, or you could even mark down, but I'm probably going to send bulk offers out. And that's actually something I did at the middle of summer. I should have done it before the summer started, but the middle of summer I did like a 50% off of coats, jackets, and sweaters, and I was able to move quite a bit of items that were just sitting there and make space for spring and summer items. So I'll be doing that. On Poshmark, if you don't want to use Posher VA, you can also just use their like bulk function. It's like the little gear at the top. There's a couple things you can do. One of them is send out offers. So you could definitely do that manually if you wanted to as well. So marking down current season items as you start to approach the end of that season. Something else you would want to do is be really cautious of comping. So obviously you're going to want to reroute your sourcing once you decide you need to pivot to the next season. So right now I am only picking up spring and summer items if they're currently comping well, like really well, like good sell-through rate, and they're selling for quite a bit. So I'm not going to pick up a $25 item probably. That is going to sit. But if it's like a $40 or $50 item, and even when it goes into winter, if I could discount a little bit and still make a little bit of money on that spring summer item, then I can do that. But I'm transitioning my sourcing for sure. And while I have been doing that, I've noticed it's really hard to get accurate comps when you are being ahead of season, because people are just now starting to purchase the colder weather items. So there's not a lot of data in the last couple of months. You're looking at all the spring and summer sales. You're not going to see good comps for the things that are going to sell well in fall and winter. And so if you're new to reselling, it's going to be a lot harder because you're not going to have the experience to know, what normally sells every year. And of course, things change, right? There's, brands change, styles fall out, but every year there are some like core items or core factors that sell well every single year for me during fall and winter. And so I heavily rely on my knowledge from previous years. But if you're new to reselling, and you don't have that knowledge, and something that I've kind of been doing is if you're doing a comp right now in the dead of summer for a colder weather item, and you see about a 50% sell-through rate, we strive for 100%. If you're following my model, you guys follow 100% sell-through rate within 90 days. So you're gonna have to pivot a little bit and say, okay, does it have at least, about 50% or higher sell-through rate in the dead of summer? If it does, and it's a colder weather item, chances are it's probably going to be good as we move to fall and winter. Obviously, that's never a guarantee until you're in the season, but about 50% I've noticed is pretty good. And then you're going to want to also see that there is significant value in the sold. So, if they're only selling 50% of the time, but they're selling for the ones that are selling for like 40, 50, 60 bucks, that's probably a really good item that you could pick up. So if you're new to reselling and you don't have the knowledge to fall back on, that's kind of been my rule, I guess, and what I'm teaching. People here that source for me who have not been through a full year of sourcing, that's kind of been my little challenge to them, because it is really difficult if you don't know. And then lastly, last thing I want to talk about regarding sourcing and seasonality is just anticipate the thrift stores also doing their seasonal change. And I've noticed that every time that they start seasonal changes is when I have the hardest time sourcing, because they kind of stop production a little bit. They want to pull all their summer items. They want to rearrange racks, rearrange signage in the store, move stuff around to make room for the fall and winter. And so once it starts happening, there's usually like a 2-week period, at least in my area, where thrift stores just pretty much just stop putting items out. It seems like there's hardly any new color items. They might bring out a rack here or there, but not the norm and not what I'm used to sourcing. And so I have a hard time every single year when they start doing that. So part of my seasonal plan is just being aware that that's probably going to happen soon, and putting a big push on myself and my team to kind of front load and source really, really hard before that happens, so that when it does and I'm unable to get a lot of items those couple of weeks, that we're still good. And I would suggest you guys do the same if you've noticed that happening in your thrift stores. But that's it. Those are all my notes. That's all I have for you guys today. I hope that if you were somebody curious about seasonality, I hope that these tips were helpful. Again, they're just what I'm doing. I'm definitely not an expert. I'd highly recommend you go onto Google Trends or do a little bit of research on another site. I bet there's like some retail research websites where you could probably figure out when stores start to transition their displays and stuff, and it could be really helpful for your reselling business. But highly recommend you get a seasonality plan. This is what works for me. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see y'all in the next one. Bye.